It was a most impressive meeting. The Prime Minister, of course, is a very impressive person who understands business.
I've invited the Prime Minister to be, if you like, the global government partner. I'll be the global industry partner to promote green hydrogen across the world.
सबसे बड़ा आधार है म्यूचुअल ट्रस्ट और म्यूचुअल रिस्पेक्ट।
Hello and welcome to Newscentre. I'm Parikshit Luthra. Prime Minister Narendra Modi is back in Australia after nearly 9 years. This time as part of a three-nation tour that began with Japan. Prime Minister Modi addressed over 20,000 members of the Indian diaspora along with his Australian counterpart Anthony Albanese in Sydney today. The event celebrated the presence of a diverse Indian diaspora in Australia. Prime Minister Albanese thanked Prime Minister Modi for bringing the spirit of the world's biggest democracy to Australia. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Modi said Indo-Australia ties are based on mutual trust and respect. He also announced that India will open a new consulate in the Brisbane. And the Prime Minister's laid the foundation stone for a Little India gateway in Harris Park, a suburb largely inhabited by Indians. The two leaders will be holding bilateral talks to boost trade and defense partnership amid China's growing aggression in the Indo-Pacific. Today's Step Forward, we're now joined by Ambassador KC Singh. Ambassador Singh, thank you very much for joining us. How significant is the Prime Minister's visit to Australia at a time when we're seeing tensions around China and China's role in the world?
See, initially this was supposed to coincide with the Quad Summit, which would have had the US President, the Japanese Prime Minister, and the Prime Minister of India and Australia there. So to an extent, the thunder was stolen because President Biden had to go back because of their problems at the Congress in terms of budget. So that Quad meeting took place on the sidelines of G7. Now, of course, without that Quad Summit taking place, the spirit of Quad is there. Australia is a very vital part of that four-nation group. And very clearly, China is one of the reasons the group is together, and the group is concerned about security in the Indo-Pacific. In a sense, the Quad meeting or this meeting taking place immediately after G7 links up what was G7 was till now focused on a Euro-Atlantic security paradigm. And that is now getting linked to an Indo-Pacific in which Japanese, Australians, and of course, India are interested. Now, as far as concrete things are concerned, there had been a summit meeting between the two prime ministers earlier this year. Now, when you have too many summits, there are really not that many takeaways. We already have an ACTA, an Economic Cooperation and Trade Agreement. We have follow-up with another economic agreement. But this is not to say that even color and celebration, even body language is not important in bilateral meetings. So this meeting is more about not so much about substance as it is about the optics of it, the fact that the two prime ministers are moving together, they're friendly, and right. what Prime Minister is talking about is mutual trust. I think that is what is important. But there is a natural fit between India and Australia. Australia has had a problem with China for some years now, even though it is the Labour government. The Labour government is running Australia now, but it was the Labour government which originally killed the Quad idea after 2007. Because they thought that they could reach out to China. But I think now there is bipartisan support for engaging India and for seeing China as a problem. Therefore, India becomes a very important trade partner.
Okay.
Australia supplies metals, minerals, other kinds of technologies, and they got a huge market. After the ACTA, 85% of products coming from,
Ambassador KC Singh?
From Australia are now tariff-free. And over the next few years, will go up to 95%. So it's opening a trade corridor, and Prime Minister's visit providing, just lubricates that sense of growth.
Right. Sir, I would also like to ask you, we're seeing this big community event which has taken place in the Sydney Park. There will be another big community event that will take place when the Prime Minister goes to the United States in June. How important is the Diaspora Connect this year? The Prime Minister completes 9 years in power. Next year will be 10 years in power. How important is this before the general election for the Prime Minister?
Look, it has been politically controversial in India because the opposition has been saying that there is a convention that you don't carry your political differences abroad. And now, I don't know what Prime Minister said about Indian politics today, but we've seen in the past that Indian politics does come in whenever he addresses the diaspora. There is also the other dimension that when you have the local leader with you, it sends out mixed signals to the opposition of that country. Because in a sense, those leaders, of course, love to have the Prime Minister there. Indians are now 2.5% of the Australian population, and they would be concentrated in a number of constituencies. So it has a domestic political dimension, which can be controversial, as we know what happened with Prime Minister and Trump just before the last US presidential election. So it's a double-edged sword. It helps you project yourself, helps Prime Minister project himself as a leader with a global audience. By the same time, it can cause local political churning or even dissatisfaction in those who are out of power in that country.
Right. Ambassador Singh, also to ask you about the big takeaway from the Prime Minister's speech at the diaspora event a short while back, and what would India like to take back from the bilateral meeting with the Prime Minister of Australia?
No, as I said, because they've just met, they were together for the Quad Summit in Hiroshima just 48 hours ago or 72 hours ago. And the Australian Prime Minister had been in India earlier this year. So when you have frequent summits, you can't have takeaways, concrete takeaways from each meeting. It's always a carrying forward the ball. Sometimes there is a kick and sometimes you just carry it slowly forward. But optics, as I said, also are important in bilateral relations. They send out signals, they convey the degree of warmth and trust between leadership. I think this visit is more about conveying the sense of trust. I thought that after the Quad meeting was postponed, or rather it was shifted to Hiroshima and President Biden was not coming, I had a feeling that maybe Prime Minister may not go to Australia because, the thunder had been stolen. Supposing the Quad Summit had taken place, there'll be no focus at all on India-Australia relations. No, because the Quad Summit is not there, we're talking of India-Australia. We're looking for a reason why the visit is there. So you won't find anything very concrete because concrete things are already in the works, have already taken place, or may come sometime later.
Right. And finally, Ambassador Singh, how do you think we would like to take the trade partnership forward? What will be some of the sticky points in the trade partnership which both the sides would like to erase during this meeting?
Look, we are not a major manufacturing country. Manufacturing is still relatively, compared to services and agriculture, a very small part of India's economic makeup. But we are moving towards manufacturing, more manufacturing in India. So then you need raw materials. Now, one of the things, of course, Adani has a huge coal mine in Australia. But if the world is moving away from coal-based energy generation, now that should be seen as a sunset phase. So we are looking at the future because Australia also has gas. So are we looking at green energy? So Australia becomes a partner in that. But there would be other minerals. You would have minerals for producing batteries because I think Australia has a great mix of minerals available. Therefore, it becomes a great partner for India because we have the manpower and we need to switch to manufacturing and we have the know-how. Australia has technology and they really don't have that much of manpower. And we have the market. So it's a resetting of relations where we'll have to catch up with the kind of products which can come from Australia, which can be used to boost manufacturing here. And that's what G7 has been talking about. Supply chains, how to make supply chains, insulate them. But at the back of all that is China. Because G7 and therefore indirectly India, we're trying to see how to create new supply chains in which India fits in. And to that extent, and those include cutting edge technologies. And to that extent, the Chinese are sort of left on the sidelines. It won't be easy. You can't break away from China. But at the same time, there's a great opportunity for India.
All right, Ambassador KC Singh, we've run out of time, but thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on the Prime Minister's Australia visit. We're going to take a short break here on News Centre, but when we return, a major cybercrime racket has been busted in Haryana by the police. 125 people detained, 28,000 alleged crimes, and 100 crore rupees looted. Details when we're back.